Hi, SAS listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. Coming to you from the Long Valley Studio in Washington, Utah. I'm your host, Dave Markel. This is episode 154, and it's with great pleasure and honor that I get to have Caroline Markel, founder and CEO of Safe in Harm's Way, back on the show with me. There is a ton of changes that are happening with both Caroline and Safe in Harm's Way as a nonprofit organization. And what you're about to hear is pretty much an exclusive for this show. Not many people have been privy to the changes that are coming, and you, as my audience, get to hear what has developed and is still being developed over the past 2.5 years or so. This is an exciting and impactful episode, so let's get to it. Here's Caroline. Caroline, it's really great to have you back with me. Thanks for joining me and welcome.
Of course, Dave. Thank you for the invitation. It's so great to be back here and to see you. I've missed you.
Me too, you. Lots has changed since we last talked. Do you mind telling us about things that have changed with Safe in Harm's Way and Caroline Markel?
I can. I've had this interesting conversation with my sons recently. I spent a lot of time with them. They don't live near me. They live several states away. I went and spent some time with them. And both of them are near 30. They're older. These aren't teenagers. And so he said, I have a lot of questions for you, Mom, but I don't want you to get angry at my questions. I truly do not understand. I said, okay. He said, as it relates to Safe in Harm's Way, you've been talking a lot in your content and in conversations about losing funding. And I said, yes. And he said, is that a result you specifically, Safe in Harm's Way, lost funding, or everybody in the nonprofit world lost funding and you were part of that because Safe in Harm's Way is a nonprofit? Great question. This is a jump in, like if I just dove off the high dive, jumped into the deep end and said, Dave, let's go on what the state of Safe in Harm's Way is. But I think the perfect way to begin is to talk about an honest question about what's happening in the state of nonprofits. So there are executive orders that have canceled funding. People need to realize if a grant was funded, that means that an organization submitted their idea to, let's say, the Office of Violence Against Women. OVW is a federal office. They run a lot of grants. That office said, yes, we agree. It fits the parameters of the grant and the money that we have. Go do the work. And then the nonprofit goes and does the work. They pay all the people that help them do the work out of their own funds. They complete the work, and all the time they're sending in paperwork and status reports to the Office of Violence Against Women, and they're remaining on track, and the office says, yes, you did it, completion. Then you get the money to reimburse yourself and all the people. So when you eliminate funding, that means anybody who worked on the grant to pull through the project initiative does not get paid. It means you as an organization, when you went and used all your money to pay for that grant, are now not getting paid back. So it's a double whammy. It's a whammy of there is no funding to pay for yourself and all the people you contracted with to do the thing that was already approved to do. And because future funding has stopped, there's no money coming in. Now, I made the very definite choice with Safe in Harm's Way to not pursue federal funding. I looked at the political climate and I thought, someday I'm betting this is all going to disappear. A lot of people told me that the sky was falling and I was Chicken Little, and how dare I, that would never happen. And boy, did it happen in a snap. So the answer to my son's question, was this directly funding for Safe in Harm's Way? Did Safe in Harm's Way get caught in the crossfire when funding for all of these organizations? Did you lose on that? And did the other organizations lose? I said, let's be specific. I'm only going to be speaking about violence prevention, the normalization of violence, and helping victims of violence. And that was a direct target. That group of nonprofit, if you want to call it an industry, completely wiped out financially. It wasn't every nonprofit. It was that nonprofit. Did other nonprofits experience losses? 100% yes. The funding that dried up relative to domestic violence, relative to sexual violence, all gone. A recent data just came out 2 weeks ago. 80% of nonprofits within this industry have had to cut services. 100% of the nonprofits are worried about whether or not they're going to be in existence. And that's a national view of the nonprofits within the domestic violence, let's be specific, and sexual assault, all worried about funding. So that was the first answer to the question. Yes, but it was targeted. It wasn't every nonprofit, different sectors, different nonprofits, but yes, the funding that we normally rely on gone. What I also made the big choice to be as a person starting a nonprofit was to collaborate with a lot of different people who were doing things different than us, bring them in to create opportunities to work together. When they lost their funding, it compromised us a little bit, but I didn't rely on that. But it does compromise Safe and Harm's Way, because if they're not able to keep up their resources that we were partnering on, boom, that's gone. The other thing is what it did for Safe and Harm's Way, which is more specific, has to do with donors. We've lost a lot of donors. We had people who now feel emboldened to say, oh, we think you helped too many Black. Now, keep in mind, when I publish data, I do it by the human we've helped, not their color, not their immigration status, just the people we've helped. But because we have very unique solutions to every person experiencing violence, we help everyone. Some people don't like that any longer. So a ton of money wiped out, gone. And let me pause there, Dave, and say, okay, what questions do you have? Because if my brilliant son has questions, I'm sure in your level of intelligence and fabulous human you are, you might have some questions. If you guys have them, everybody has them.
I personally don't have questions because all of this makes sense to me. I've been in the nonprofit sector one way or another, either on a board with the Jan Broberg Foundation or even as a cop working with organizations that were nonprofits and obtaining money from the government. I remember issues like this clear back in the late 80s, early 90s, through the 90s, into the 2000s, right before I retired, that the government was going to start cutting back and that nonprofits should start finding funding from the private sector. But never did they talk about cutting back so much that organizations would end up having to fold or close to having to fold. And that's what's happening now. I understand it. I don't know that my audience grasps it. So I'm glad you're explaining it the way you are, because it makes perfect sense. You're doing a very good job of articulating what is going on. I'm going to add something into this, and it's not just the political scene and climate of the current administration and DOGE and everything else, but there's huge issues with the economy itself and people no longer being able to donate. Some of the people that were helping nonprofits, not just big organizations, but the everyday person trying to help out and being altruistic and giving donations to nonprofits that they supported, and they aren't anymore. Like you said, I mean, all of that is drying up, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that our economy sucks. And, and so people don't have the money they did, nor do large organizations. Like you said, it's just not there anymore.
It's just not. You're exactly right. So this funding all started happening in November, the writing on the wall, November of 2024. In October of 2024, I found out that even though, now this is part of the story, if anybody who's listening to this, I'm sure has experienced it, if you've had to navigate violence, especially sexual violence, I found out 8 years after the fact, an investigative reporter started snooping around on my own personal case and found out that the Lee Summit Police Department in Jackson County, Missouri, did not file any report when I showed up with a mountain full of evidence of my fiance drugging me and offering me up for other people to rape. Tons of evidence. They filed nothing. Now, I have been telling my story since 2018. It happened to me from 2009 to 2016. So that was devastating to me.
Yeah, how could it not be? I mean, I'm sitting here listening to this. There was the big story in the news, when was it, last fall, of the woman in Italy?
France.
In France.
Yeah, her story is my story.
Exactly.
Her story is my story.
And that made national news, and yours went absolutely nowhere, and it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Nobody decided to make that report. I am so thankful that my daughter went with me to make it, because we've got somebody saying, no, we were there. So that was devastating to me.
Question, though. No report was made, or they didn't do anything with the report? You mean like there was no paper? They didn't write anything down? None of the officers or detectives that took the report did reports?
No.
Okay, that I know what that implies. Go on with your story, because I'm really curious as to how you handled this.
I will be very transparent. I am a big proponent of talking about healing not being linear. I will talk about when you're healing from something like this or anything else in your life. You can thrive, you can do all the healing, you can do all the therapy, and you are still going to have bad days. I plummeted. It wasn't just a bad day, it was rage. because people like my former fiance don't stop. They just get smarter. And keep in mind, I had a card with a report number on it that I was consistently calling on. And no one bothered to tell me that there was no report file. They just all said, oh yeah, there's no more information, which means that no one even bothered to check it out when I called. And I know this is common, but I was hanging my hat that if some other person in any place in Kansas City decided to report that, hey, I can't remember his name, but all I know is I was sitting next to this guy, and then in the morning, XYZ had happened, all these things, something could connect the dots. The detective was, they're not going to change anything. They're not going to change any protocol. He said he would give what he called head knowledge to the current person who is their sexual assault police officer. And I said, what's head knowledge? He said, well, we just go and tell the person, hey, we've had somebody report on this guy. I'm sorry, what? But then within their system, if you go in to report a sexual assault, you don't even get sometimes the officer. The officer, even if they're not there, you don't ever get a call back from that person. You get a call from the responding officer who was closest when you went in to report, who they can't confirm whether or not all of their police officers have any training within rape or sexual assault. They will not report to me what that looks like or how they handle it from there, nothing. I told him the good news was that every article I write, every book I write, every speech I give, every podcast I do, I will be sure to name the Lee Summit, Jackson County, Missouri Police Department and their lack of even filing a report. And then they publish all this great news about we have the lowest crime rate in history.
Of course.
You do
Yeah.
as a town because you don't report things.
If you don't report anything, your stats are going to be nice and low.
I went in a spiral of why am I even doing this? Why am I helping? Why have I sacrificed myself financially? Why have I sacrificed so many things in my life? No one cares. No one cares. And that is like a moment in time for you and I, because I was going to be a regular on the show. And I said, Dave, I can't do it. I don't even know what I'm going to do next. So my son and I, back to my son, we were talking about how do you keep talking about going on when all your tricks that usually pull you out and back into a healing state versus a frantic, more rage than fear. How do you do that? And then, Mom, how do you keep talking to people? What you do saves and changes lives. How can you get that back in your head? And how are you going to talk to people and encourage them to report when you know that the odds stacked against them are pretty significant? And I said, I don't know that yet, but it has to be part of the story that if you have the courage, and no judgment if you don't, do what you can for yourself at the time and know that you're not alone and know that none of this was your fault. So the more we talked about that, some ideas sprang forward and how we're going to continue with Safe in Harm's Way. But I had to go through, again, a process of healing and rage. He's got a very unique last name. I'd like it to be known. I'd like it to be known before his parents die. I'd like it to be known so that his sisters are held accountable because they're mandated reporters who should have filed things with the state. That's where my level of anger was, which brought me to my other son, and he's such a Zen human, just so cool. And he's like, Mom, his punishment is his life. I said, yes, but he's hurting people. He's like, Mom, we know that. We knew that within a week of finding out exactly who he was. We talked about how his level of harming people has gone from humans down to animals, probably, and that's only going to get worse. So let his hell be on earth. None of that has to do with you, because you've created a life that's pretty amazing. And while right now you're struggling, you've created something that's helped people. You've created something that people have been able to find solutions for and healing from. And his entire life is his punishment. I can't imagine what it's like to live in his head, but I'm sure it's disgusting and gloomy and dark.
We can only hope. But I also hope that the fear of being found out and something finally happening legally, hanging over his head, I hope is causing a tremendous amount of fear and dread also. I don't know this guy.
And I would want
But
I fear
think,
and dread, and I hope like a shit ton of gastrointestinal problems.
Yeah.
Like I hope that the physicality of his body, because I have always felt deep in my soul that it wasn't going to be me, no matter how vocal I was about it. It was not going to be me that issued his consequence. Again, they only get worse, and we know that he had a history before me of doing these things, that consequence was going to come from someone other than me. And I do believe that down in my soul. Can't name you how, can't tell you when. Just know that I'll be a supporting character in that, but not the one that brings them to justice. When I first started talking about it and the advocacy road and creating safe and harm's way, I'd get calls from all kinds of people wanting to further their own missions or had an idea of what they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And there was these two women who were powerhouses, and we had several hour-plus long conversations. They just disappeared. I don't know where they went. I don't know what happened. There's not either one of them who've ever reached back out again. I have a feeling if perpetrators get a hold of that kind of stuff, they issue all kinds of warnings. I wonder if it was something like that. But yeah, it would be great to be able to have that list of a way to report in like Bumble, but match the survivors to the person. They're serial offenders. They're not
one and done.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting, I love about Callisto, and I've talked to Tracy and Ray Epstein and all the work that she's done in supporting them. The interesting part about Callisto is that many of the people that report in say just getting their name and story into the database is healing in and of itself.
Yes.
Whether or not anything ever comes of that information, whether or not any matches are ever made, just knowing that their story is in there and that someday it could help someone else is extremely edifying to that person's mental health. I love that.
Right. I do too. That's like a perfect jumping off point. One of the things in my own evolution is, okay, this is all happening at the same time. Man, I'll want to be transparent and honor the conversation I had with one of the son who was like, how are you going to weave this into your story, Mom? And that is, go ahead, no matter how long it takes. When you have reached a new evolution or a new discovery, go ahead and take as much time as you need. I've been processing this for a month, and there are still some bad days. The other side of that is my processing it for months has taken the most beautiful twists and turns of meeting amazing people. And I am more at peace than I have ever been in my life.
That is so good. I'm really happy to hear that.
So it's worth it. It's worth it to do that hard work. It's worth it to go ahead and be sad. It's worth it to rail. It's worth it. It's worth it. One of the things that happened is a new prosecutor was elected for Jackson County, and she has issued a mandate that every police reporting doesn't get to decide whether or not a report is filed. If it falls under one of very many things of which sexual assault is one, it automatically is sent to her office, and they decide, and they follow up, and they put it into a docket. So they are making the charges, not the individual police municipalities. I started looking for the helpers, like Melissa. Who are the people rising up out of nowhere to be doing work? And that is happening. So following the helpers has been a good thing, which led to the thing we're going to be doing. First of all, funding is not there for me to do one-on-one anymore. And honestly, my nervous system can't do it.
Yeah, that's hard.
We're going to be creating services that specifically address friends, family, and coworkers and how to be the best support system. Because if you can find helpers that help honor your story and don't shame you for your story or shame you for your healing process or shame you for what you're going through, whether that's at work, that's somebody you love, or it's somebody in your friend group, that, to your point about Callisto, and even just sharing your story and being heard, huge for healing. I can't think of any better way to honor my children than to create that for other people. If my children hadn't believed, if my children had said, oh my God, Mom, he's paying for everything, like he's taking us on fancy trips, we love him, it would have been far different. If my friends hadn't done that, my healing journey would have started off in the negative, like in a plummeting valley of fire and brimstone and the plague. So if I can take all the people who came as helpers for me and amplify that in ways that people can acknowledge, address, and show up for somebody who says, hey, this happened to me, then we do two things. We start to bridge the gap between the services are being cut out that shelters are doing And we start to create an opportunity where survivors can feel immediately seen and heard so that they then can do the healing that they need to do.
Yeah. One of my good friends and strong advocates for victims and survivors is Jessica Pride. She's a private attorney in San Diego who helps victims and survivors civilly sue perpetrators. She's got a very successful business at that. She was just on the show recently, her and her business partner, who opened a healing organization called Serona Health. And she just did a little reel for, I think, Instagram, where she highlighted something she said on this show when I interviewed her and V not too many weeks ago. And that is, victims and survivors, to a large extent, have to heal themselves. It's personal work. But what you need is the tools to help yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's what Serona's doing. That's what Safe and Harm's Way is doing. That's what Callisto is doing to some extent. Because of what you said, that healing journey is not linear. And once victims and survivors come to that realization, many of them come to that realization on their own. They don't have to be told that. They just feel it and know it and live it. I call it a trauma roller coaster because you've got your highs and you've got your lows, and they never stop. It just goes and goes and goes that way until one day you're healed enough that you can call the roller coaster ride over. You can say it's done.
Yeah.
But getting to the end of that roller coaster, it does take a lot of work. It's hard.
It does. Absolutely. I know that when people do find those solutions and resources, they can tap into them whenever they need. And they become better advocates for anybody else who reports to them on how to show up better. What we can do in creating those safe spaces and the resources is the second part of that evolution for Safe and Harm's Way, which is really one of the first tenets that we started with, but it kind of went to the back burner because there were so many other things we needed to do. But I'm thinking of all the data that says if 50%, 60% now, I think, on college campuses, women are sexually assaulted. And they don't report. What they do is tell their best friend. If their best friend says, "You were so drunk, what the hell were you thinking?" Or, "I told you to leave with me." Or, "You know what, he's a really cool guy." That person, or a woman, whatever, because the statistics for men being sexually assaulted are right. Those people will not speak of that assault again until they are in their 50s. So we are losing decades of productive human beings hiding the biggest secrets unless we teach that at the beginning or unless we teach the stories. My hope is to someday align with an entity where we can tap into young girls so they know what good touch feels like, trust their instincts, to not be afraid to be rude. How do we do this? To immediately tell someone. We reach the middle, the teenagers to college students and a little past that age, because they're the ones that are at risk during those biggest times. We reach their mothers who might have experienced that statistically, a good chunk of them who've never said one word. We reach their fathers who may have been, as young boys, harmed, and we help them heal from that. And then we also teach their dads to stand up. When you're in a group of your friends and your friend is talking about how some 12-year-old looks hot in her tiny little skirt, that you shut that shit down. Yeah. That you call out your fellow male humans and say, not acceptable.
Right.
So in my world, I have an idea who that person is, but I want to create some kind of dynamic where we can organically, in a way where people are already invested, that we can have an undercurrent of, hey, think about these things too, in a way that is engaging and not fearful, in a way that has people talking and aware. And then we multi-generationally heal people, because statistically, there's a lot of folks. So that's my dream, is to take that to a level that it is, I'm calling it, my working title in my head is 12:45 a.m. bathroom break. When you're at, for that age group, you know, the college, high school, and you're a little bit tipsy, and all of a sudden you meet your best friend in the bathroom and you have never met them in your life, and you're giving her advice on what to do with her boyfriend because she's in there crying and she's absolutely fabulous and she's feeling like she's been tossed away. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you're like best buddies. Yeah. I want to create best buddies randomly. I want that kind of vibe, that energy of, girl, I believe you. Oh my God, that should not have happened to you. Oh my God, what are we going to do to hold him accountable? Like that kind of energy. I want to be able to have cards that people can give out that have the resources and a QR code on the back, scan it, and they'll instantly know what a SANE nurse is, what a rape kit is, how long it is to do an exam. All of these things so that we can give out information that just says to somebody, hey, I'm a safe person. Like, please know if anything ever happens to you, there are people in this world who will believe you. Please know to not stop asking questions till you find the person that believes you. Those kinds of cards that people can hand out in the random 12:45 a.m. bathroom break or the lunch or whatever. People hear so many conversations. This is a neutral way. I'm coming up with a line of it that allows people to know instantly by recognition that the person you've just walked past is safe. If you're in a situation, you're out someplace and you spot somebody who's wearing a certain medallion on their jeans, you know that they're a safe space. That you can go to them and say, oh my God, something just happened to me and I'm scared. Let's take this concept of a safe house that Quick Trip or gas stations or hospitals have and bring it to the individual human that says, you can trust me. So it would be growing it to that point. A lot of dynamics, but anyway, that's the ultimate goal. And the other thing is that we're going to be bringing some of those same services pivoted to survivors. By this, I mean survivors who have become advocates. If you have advocates who have not done the hard work of healing, they are going to further traumatize people they're helping. The new vibe we're going for, Safe in Harm's Way, is going to be audacious and irreverent. I have never seen so many 7th grade girls in the industry of advocacy and domestic violence. And by 7th grade girls, I mean the snotty ass brats who don't play nice with other kids in the playground and actually demean and marginalize anybody who tries to get in on the hopscotch.
Yeah.
I'm tired of it. I've been doing this for 8 years, and it is absolutely egregious the way that other advocates treat each other, and that the way I see them or hear their stories about how they've talked to survivors seeking help. I have services outlined for them. You can take advantage of it or you can't, but I am going to start calling it out.
Yeah.
Like the reason we are in this state. If you, how long you got, Dave? Because I'm on fire. Let me pause. I should pause and say, what questions do you have about what I just said, Dave?
No,
I'm on a roll.
Again, no questions, just positive reinforcement. You are so spot on. I'm glad you've picked up on that. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. And more people need to realize that.
The amount of survivor forums, and I'm not going to name names, but there are survivor forums where the survivors actually are cruel to other survivors. Well, I had something like that happen to me and I didn't act like that. You must be lying.
Yeah.
I've had advocate forums where the same thing is done to other advocates. There are people at a national level who are god-awful, and the way they treat other people doing this hard work is egregious. The way they talk about each other in the organization, horrific.
Absolutely.
So I want to be able to have those kinds of conversations. I've got a relationship with the organization that I took for several of my certifications and coaching. So they've agreed to give a percentage off to people who want to take their trauma-informed coaching certificate that work within domestic violence and advocacy, and they'll get that information from Safe in Harm's Way. Hopefully that will help. Hopefully that is something, A, you could take that off your taxes. B, you might be able to get the organization that you work for to pay for a few of you to go through the training. It's separate from Safe in Harm's Way, but will be the conduit to which we can bring people through. She's offering free ebooks that people can opt in on to read about trauma certification and trauma-informed care. So I hope that's one component. I'm also, from a digital media and marketing standpoint, we're really good at what we do. It's been on pause because I've been trying to decide all these things. But we're going to have services that people for a low cost to entry can do to bring their services to people in a unique way, since some of what they're doing might have to shut down as far as in-house, that they can deliver those things via digital marketing resources online. So that will be an offering as well on Safe in Harm's Way. The final thing will be, to your point about storytelling, I know as an organization, we need to really look at how we're accepting stories, because I don't want it to become trauma porn. I don't want people to be re-traumatized. I don't want them to, so all those things, there's a lot in the works, but I'm going to allow people to, I've bought an AI system and a class that I'm taking, and people can create their own avatars to tell the story, which means you can change all the names. And hopefully that relies on less feedback coming at you. Civil suits, I love. I think there's nothing better than a civil suit, but you want to make sure that you're not held accountable for defamation if you pursue a civil suit against the person who harmed you. So all kinds of things in the works that will be different, will be layered into how we've been showing up, but will be a little bit different based on my own journey and based on what my nervous system can handle and based on funding. I can't do anything more until there's funding. I've exhausted every piece of financial advocacy personally. And that's another big epiphany. I realized how unhealed I was in very many things, and advocates aren't taking care of themselves. I went to a conference and most of them were missing several teeth, and there's no health care because the shelters aren't providing health care, and everybody has an ailment and everybody has a comorbid condition physically that they're dealing with. And that's, in my experience, who I've met. And it's because as advocates, if we jump in not having fully healed ourselves, we're not taking care of ourselves mentally and physically. So we have to start looking at those kinds of things of how to get people to have basic care and basic coverage and financially not risk themselves. Again, I don't regret what I did. I know how it's going to turn out. I have that, but I'm going to be a lucky one. I'm going to be a fortunate one. So then, as we've always done, is I'm going to turn in how do I bring that to other people so that they have it and so that they are aware of those things. Yeah. We have to do better all the way around. I'm hoping and believing that what we can bring to the table and find the right partners along the way, because if there's other people doing this important work, I am all about taking your hand and let's go change the world together. I am not a gatekeeper on what we're going to be doing, and if somebody decides they're doing it better, and can we take what you've talked about and can we run with it together, or vice versa? Yes, let's do that. Yeah. The load is lighter when you're carrying it with other people.
There's no doubt in my mind that we could keep talking about this for another 6 hours.
I know.
How do we close this out and still keep a fire under somebody and keep them looking forward to hearing from you again?
I know that the hard work of healing makes a difference. I know that if people have experienced some kind of body violation, most oftentimes at the hands of somebody they know or claims to love them.
Absolutely.
That healing is worth it. You are worth it. If it happened to you when you were 20 and you're now 55 and you have had a productive career and you're a rock star and you think I've got it handled, go ahead and pick apart that. I tell you what, you're holding on to some things. It's there. It's there in a variety of ways. Seek the help at the time when it's best for you. And if you don't find the right people to help you, don't stop asking. Keep that up. Because the chorus of voices needed in this world includes people who've experienced that kind of shamed silence. My travels across the world in doing this work, hands down, every time, the most amazing, intelligent, kind, empathetic people are those who have sat in silence on the things that hurt them most. And if we can get people to talk about that, they blossom more. They live fuller lives. They start to recognize patterns that have been safety mechanisms their whole life, from the point of which it happened until now. So do that hard work of healing and know that you're believed. Know that there are people, regardless of how insane your story is, that will believe you. Mm-hmm. That if you keep talking, you will find the right people. And if at the same time you choose to invest in yourself, that is a combination that is magic. And by investing in yourself, it does look a lot like eating right, does look a lot like exercise, all of which are free to a certain extent. Exercise, eating right, you can control what you're eating, you're not eating out, you're not eating all kinds of junk food all the time. You can start to heal yourself in those ways as well, and you are worth the effort. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, you are worth the effort, because your story is going to be the difference maker in somebody else's journey.
I'm going to do a plug for Sexual Assault Survivor Stories podcast. It is critical for people who hear this to act on it, to tell other people about it, and to take the advice from the people that are guests on this show, and whether they're experts like yourself, Caroline, or whether they are victims or survivors who have found a pathway to further their healing. This show has produced people like you and other agencies that are helping listeners. And so I'm honored to provide this platform because I know it's helping people because they get to hear you and other survivors and other experts. There is a plethora of tools and supplies of advocacy that does work, and comments like the one you just made. Do your work. Do whatever you have to do to heal yourself, and rely on those opportunities and those tools and those people who are willing to help.
They're there. I mean, you might have to hunt for them, but the people who want to help are there. We have some outages, I think, within advocacy, like we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good to be making aware, because I don't want a survivor to run across a bad advocate and say, oh my God, it's me. I did something wrong. No, honey. You just didn't find the right person.
Right.
Don't stop. Don't stop.
And that's what's critical, is for people to hear what you just said. This is so important. I want to emphasize everything that you've been talking about.
I feel as if I have been explaining over and over, well, we're on a break. It is the end of August, and the discovery of this happened at the end of October. We've got two big things pulling across the program that I've been working on for 2.5 years. So I am working on those things. Those are big. They should be put across the program, and they directly to relate, interestingly enough, to all the new things we want to bring in. So I'm determined to bring those things in. Those have been cooking for a couple years. Forcing myself to not do anything outside of those two things we've got going has been an exercise that in my 56 years, never experienced. I have squashed so many feelings down in order to plug forward and be productive and results oriented, and I'm just not doing it. And again, as insane as this time has been, I am more at peace and more content than I have been in my life.
So glad.
And that is something that I am proud, kind of, but more like so thankful that I took the time and I had the conversations with people that said, I'm struggling. And I actually walked away from a lot of people that I thought, you bring nothing of value to my life. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I've hung on to you for, and you're kind of mean. Like, why are we still friends? So it's that growth. There's sadness in growth too, because you're discovering all kinds of things about yourself.
Yeah.
And about the people you hang out with. And sometimes that's not pretty, but don't stop. Don't stop pursuing the healing, and don't let one exchange with a person who didn't help us. They should have stopped you from trying to find the other helpers.
Yeah. This has been time well spent.
You're just an excellent human, and what you bring in, your kindness and your intelligence and your history to this equation is really magic, because you don't turn somebody's story. I've seen some podcasts where I'm like, oh, honey, can we remove you? I've sent so many messages to survivors on Instagram saying the way you were talked to and the way you were treated was unkind and unacceptable. So if you're feeling like this, please know you're spot on. I am so sorry that happened to you. Right. How you were talked to by the host, how you were approached by the subject matter. None of that was acceptable, and I'm so sorry. And every person has responded with, oh, thank God.
Yeah. I'm not the only one who felt it. You heard it? Yeah, you heard that?
I thought it was me.
Right.
No, darling, I'm sorry. It was not you. And you, Dave, just don't do that. First of all, you're not wired that way. But secondly, your education, your experience, everything about you is just gracious, intelligent, and kind. I mean, I hope in my world that I get to have you as my friend for the rest of my life. And I intend to live like at least another 53 years. So
I appreciate you. And I appreciate you saying what you just said. And it echoes much of what I have the pleasure and honor of hearing from many guests who have said, thank you for not putting a spin on my story in a way that puts a bad light on me.
Yeah.
I just had a guest last week, in fact, that emailed me yesterday that said that very thing. After hearing how you edited this and how you took my story and the things you said, thank you for doing what you're doing and putting it out there the way it should be put out there.
We have to have people hear that, because we also need them to recognize if they're listening to a podcast and something doesn't seem right in how the interviewer queued it up or the spin they took on the situation or made light of it in any way, we have to have people saying, yeah, what you did was not cool.
Right. No, you're spot on. Thank you for saying that too.
Yeah. 'Cause I want you using all my words, Dave Markel.
I will use your words. It's my words that I'm trying to temper, because I sure as heck don't want people thinking, oh, Dave's out there tooting his own horn.
Well, you should toot your own horn. What you do is great.
Thank you. Thank you for saying what you've said. This is a powerful, powerful episode.
I hope so, because I'm a little salty. So, I might have to fight people in the jump rope playground area of advocacy, but that's okay. I'm not being quiet about it anymore.
There are not enough people like you, and I want to be part of that. I want to be the platform to get your voices out there. Thank you.
Thank you for being who you are, Dave.
Can we do this again?
Yes.
Okay. That does it for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. Huge kudos go out from me to Caroline Markel for an exciting and informative episode. Thank you, Caroline, for your open and transparent discussion with me about the changes that have happened with you and with Safe in Harm's Way. It truly is an honor to be in on your perspectives, your plans, and the implementation of what is sure to be a massive impact on the world of rape and sexual assault advocacy. You have my admiration and best wishes for nothing but success in the implementation of what is sure to be critically important in bringing justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. Thank you, Caroline. This has been a tremendous experience for me and the SAS audience. To all my SAS listeners, I hope you take away not just the excitement of Caroline's forthcoming changes for Safe in Harm's Way, but also the hope and actionable impact that these changes will make in the lives of victims and survivors that Safe in Harm's Way reaches. If Caroline's plans for the future resonated with you, consider sharing this episode and supporting all that Safe in Harm's Way is doing to help bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. Your monetary donations make a massive impact. Also, keep in mind that when you share episodes, you're contributing to the critically important aspect of normalizing the conversation and helping to lessen the prevalence of rape and sexual assault. Additionally, don't forget to do your part to start by believing when someone tells you their story of interpersonal violence, because we all know someone whose life has been impacted by rape or sexual assault. Thank you for being here, and don't forget to tune in next week when I bring you another guest that can help change lives and normalize the conversation. We'll see you next week.